with the affordable housing project. We just want to go deep into this document and try to understand what is contained in the 327 pages. Dr. or Engineer Maurice Akech is the Executive Director at the National Construction Authority. They are the developers of this document. He's going to take us through this document. Engineer, thank you very much indeed for joining us. First of all, help us understand what is different from the new building code from the old building code.
Thank you very much, O'Brien, for this opportunity. I want to take this opportunity to thank KBC also for giving us this opportunity to enlighten Kenyans. And more specifically, I want to greet Kenyans from wherever they are in any part of the country, and now have an opportunity to discuss this document in detail. And the question you've asked is very fundamental, and the reason for the difference is why there was need to revise the National Building Code. So the National Building Code that we have just replaced through this new one was approved in 1968, which is many years ago. The major difference of in the old code and this new one is the prescriptive nature in which the old building code was. It was prescriptive in a way that it was restricting innovation and development. Again, the old code, as you know it, did not embrace what we call the emerging technologies, green technologies, the things like LPG gas connection, things like the digital connectivity into buildings and reticulation, things like climate change, and so on and so forth. So there's a fundamental difference between the old code and the new code, and also giving emphasis to the fact that we have onboarded in the new code what we call hazard resilient designs, which considers earthquakes. And by the other day, there was an earth tremor around Nairobi. This code takes care of that. Fundamentally, it's not the discretion of the designer. It is by the code prescribed that it must be considered. There was issue of floods, and not long ago we had some flooding issues in our country. It's a requirement that you must assess for flooding risks before you undertake a design. There are issues of wind speeds, which can also make tall structures be affected in terms of even end up even collapsing, and so on and so forth. And most importantly, it is good to understand that this code looks at issues of safety and puts focus on safety of the occupier, on the users of the building, and without forgetting, it has also considered all the way from what we call feasibility studies to design, to construction, to maintenance. All that is captured in the new code, while the old code did not embrace that. Yes.
You know, there has always been argument that one of the challenges that the old code faced was a non-compliance and non-enforcement by government agencies. And so what are we going to do to ensure that you, as a custodian of this document, as the National Construction Authority, that this document is going to be adhered to, and the desired penalties are meted on anyone who is going to flout these regulations?
Very good. So it's good to understand that the old code, 1968, that has been repealed by the new code, having been approved by the relevant approving authorities, as well as having been launched recently on Wednesday, was being implemented under the local authorities then, that structure. Then in 2012, of course, there was a repeal of the Local Authorities Act with the Devolution Act, and of course with the coming up of the new constitution. What this does, in essence, is that that building code, which is actually a regulation, lost a home. So there was need to look for a home for it. So for about 8 years, from 2012 to 2020, when now the government saw the need to amend the National Construction Authority Act to include the development and enforcement of the building code, it's at that point that now the ministry, the State Department of Public Works and the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development and Public Works, so that it is good now to finalize that particular document, which had started its development 20 years back from today, from when it was launched. Almost 20 years we've been working on it. So from that time on, there was that need to amend the NC Act to introduce the enforcement and development of the new building code. So the enforcement provisions are actually provided for in under the substantive act of NCA, but it's also good to understand that the building code is actually a set of rules with the standards that guide what needs to be done where within the building sector or construction sector. What that means is that for this to be properly enforced, it's now been put under the umbrella of the NC Act, but it also gives recognition of the Physical and Land Use Planning Act, which is actually primarily being domiciled or being driven by the counties, which actually has a very important role to play even in the implementation of this code, where now they'll be looking at the Physical and Land Use Planning Act, we'll be looking at the NC Act, and all the other relevant acts in the construction sector to ensure that enforcement provisions are adequately taken care of where people do not comply with those requirements. Yes.
And so, first of all, this document, it talks about so many things, from the sound insulation, glazing, to cleaning systems, lighting and ventilation, to, oh good Lord, it has so many chapters, to fire resistance of building of different occupancies, division of building into components, provision of refuse disposal. And so, it's good, it's one thing to have a new law. It's another thing to ensure that it is implemented. How is the National Construction Authority primed to ensure that this document is implemented to the last letter?
A very good question. So if you look at this building code, it is not a document that is implemented under one stakeholder. It's a multi-stakeholder implementation document that requires all of us, all players in the construction industry. And I'm happy when you are reading through what it covers. It caters for everyone on board. So if you look at the design part, there are different types of design. So there's architectural design, engineering designs, and so on and so forth. When you look at the next stage after the design, the construction aspect, so there are people who are supposed to implement, construction workers and contractors. If you look at the maintenance, they're also going to maintain, and they're also policy makers. So in a nutshell, this particular building code on board has everyone on board. And we are supposed to work through a multi-pronged approach, where all of us need to identify who is dealing with which part so that we're able to implement. But most importantly, the overall coordination will be done by the National Construction Authority, because that coordination framework is very key. And if you look at...
because this document is domiciled at NCA.
Yes, under the NCA Act, which is under the Ministry of State Department of Public Works. Yeah, so that's where standards are and regulation is domiciled. And of course, the Act is keenly dealing with that. So if you look at section... paragraph 6, for instance, because you'll be asking who is responsible for what. You look at paragraph 6, which is, I told you, that's part 1, yes, towards the last end of part 1, towards part 2 now. Paragraph 6.1 says that the preparation of the design and supervision of the works in buildings shall only be undertaken by a professional in the respective fields of specification. 6.2 talks about a professional under paragraph 1, includes a physical planner, architect, engineer, land surveyor, building surveyor, quantity surveyor, accredited site supervisor, accredited skilled construction worker, and duly registered, who are duly registered under the relevant law. So anyone who is a practitioner in the construction sector, registered under the relevant law, has a role to play when it comes to supervision of buildings, as far as this code defines and dictates. So that's how important it is, and that's how it has catered for it. But we've also connected this code, as I told you, to various laws that also regulate or interact with the construction sector, as it were.
Yes. And bearing in mind that you know, the built environment, it brings together so many agencies and so many players. You know, you have the county government, you have the Ministry of Lands, you have the National Construction Authority, Engineers Board of Kenya, Borax, which is in charge of architects. What framework is there to ensure that when all of you come together, you reason together and then you act together?
Very good. So the first framework legally constituted, we can talk about currently, is now the code. This code, as you look at it, it identifies all those professionals and players and various institutions to ensure that everyone has a role to play. But remember, those institutions are also set up under the relevant statutes, which put them together. But in terms of working, this code, for me, is an integrator. But apart from that, we can also come up, as I've told you, administratively, what we call a collaborative approach. And as we speak now, we have also come up with a memorandum of understanding between, for instance, Engineers Board of Kenya, NCA, National Construction Authority, as well as the Board of Registration of Architects and Quantity Surveyors, and working together to be able to ensure we move together. But for the other players, we also have what we call continuous engagement through multi-sectoral approach to be able to ensure that we are able to collaborate and work together. But most importantly, because this code being a new item, it is good to understand that there will be need to have what we call onboarding. And how do we onboard? We will need to reach out to all the stakeholders now that it is approved and launched to ensure we do adequate sensitization, adequate awareness, and adequate training in all the levels of stakeholders to ensure that within 1 year, when the code will become effective after it was published, we are able to now start proper implementation once that time comes. Yes.
This document, you know, is supposed to come into force 1 year from now.
Yes.
So between now and then, what is NCA doing, or what will you be doing to ensure that stakeholders are well appraised on the content of this document and the penalties therein?
Very good. So the first point of action will be bring to the attention of all the stakeholders the presence of this particular code by stratifying, basically identifying, and reaching, was already we know them, but reaching out to them by sending them information about the availability and presence of this code. Number 2, we'll be carrying out adequate sensitization to all stakeholders. Depending on which category of stakeholders, some will be doing sensitization. And sensitization and awareness, it should be for the entire Republic of Kenya and all the other stakeholders. Why do I say so? Because everyone is actually affected positively and impacted positively by this code. The second level will be training. Training now will be for the users. Like, for instance, you talk about the professionals and the counties and the contractors and construction workers. Those are key users who actually interact with it on a day-to-day basis. And why so? Because after the code becomes effective, it is expected that at the county level, they'll be using actually this code to be able to approve or audit the designs and approve them only after they are compliant with the relevant sections of the code. For instance, architectural plans, when they are prepared by the relevant professional, who in this case who is an architect, and they submitted to the county for county approval under the Physical and Land Use Planning Act, it is expected that there will be the officer responsible at that level will be using this code to check, let's say, the siting. Siting is basically siting and space about buildings, about setbacks on roads, and all those things they need to look, the headrooms, the space around buildings, and so on and so forth. Now, that's where the code will come in handy for the architect, so that by the time they are submitting to the county, the counterpart of the county will be already also onboarded by what the requirements are. On the engineer side, the engineer will also be using the same. They'll have checked against all the design parameters that are needed to be done in terms of earthquake, wind speed, flooding. There's mandatory requirement to check geotechnical, the soil parameters, and so on and so forth. That's how this thing is very, very elaborate in terms of use. At the other level, we'll need to educate the consumers. Who are the consumers? Consumers are basically they would be occupiers of those buildings. Developers who are actually engaging the professionals. So by engage a professional, and professional is developing the design, they'll be able to tell the professional that, look, according to the code, this needs to be provided. In fact, this is also a very good document where a developer can take the designer to task that, according to the code, I don't think this has been provided. Can you look at it and review according to the code? Those are some of the things we are intending to. So within this 1 year, we will be engaging on training, on sensitization, and awareness to all stakeholders across board. Yes.
Very good. Ahmed, if you're just joining us, we're having a very interesting conversation here with the Executive Director at the National Construction Authority, and our focus is on this document. This is a building code 2024. It has been in the making for the last 24 years, okay, or 20 years or thereabouts. And we have been using a document, the building code that is now revoked, was put in place back in 1968. Yes, 1968. That is a document that we have been putting in place. And so it is very important for us to understand the content of this document so that we can safeguard our construction industry, which is one of the biggest contributors to Kenya's GDP. We welcome your questions. And I have one question here from Ephraim Kakui. You are on X. And the question that you're asking is, I have a question to Engineer Maurice Akech. Why were construction managers and landscape architect, interior designers left out under Section 6 of the Building Code 2024, yet they have been part of this process for more than 23 years? Have they been left out?
No. In terms of the process of development of this code, it has been all stakeholder inclusive, and we've engaged widely. But if you look at that particular section we referred to, and I may read, that's actually particularly section 6.2, or paragraph 6.2, which talks of a professional under paragraph 1. And paragraph 1 is the one that determines who can design and supervise, includes physical planner, architect, engineer, land surveyor, building surveyor, quantity surveyor, accredited site supervisor, and accredited skilled worker duly registered under the relevant law. So all the professionals that have existing laws or recognized under the respective laws have been included here. In fact, it is good to understand that code is basically a regulation. And a regulation is normally what we call a subsidiary legislation. Subsidiary legislation is domiciled in a substantive act of parliament. Like, for instance, this code, for NCA to develop it under the State Department of Public Works, it is because the NCA Act was amended in 2020, March 2020, under the Ease of Doing Business. And it's through that amendment that there was the mandate to develop the code and publish it was brought into being, of course, by the minister, the publication by the minister in consultation with the board of NCA. What this means is that if there is any other existing professional recognized under the law which is under the sun, then all of them have been included here. So what's important to maybe Ephraim is if we can get, because we searched everywhere, if we can get a law that actually already regulates the professionals that he's talking about.
That's construction managers.
Construction managers. It can be very easy, and of course, the code is not static. It's a regulation. Regulation can be revised anytime when there's any change of policy or even the change of the mother law. Today, if the NCA Act makes some amendment or amendment of any act that is mentioned here is made, definitely there will be need for review. And that can be done any other time. So
we don't have any legislation that recognizes construction managers in our republic currently?
Currently, there's none that I'm aware of, yes.
And so then it behoves Ephraim and people like him to lobby now to start having a conversation on how they can be recognized under various legislations here in Kenya. I also want to find out, Engineer, this document is very critical in Kenya's building and construction industry. And It is very important for contractors, for engineers, for anybody involved in the construction industry, as well as developers, to have a copy of this document. Where would they get a copy of this document so that they can read and understand the content therein?
Well, very good. So even as we wait to roll out the sensitization and awareness and training program to be able to have a smooth takeoff for the building code once implementation begins a year from now, we have actually uploaded this particular document in the NCA website. So currently it is in the NCA website, which is www.
So they can download it
.nca.go.ke. The document is there in its full page and in the document as it is here. Yeah. So it's actually currently in our website. They can download it there. Yeah, and we'll find more ways of also engaging so that people can have easy access. But more so, it's also important to note that because different stakeholders, players will be dealing with different parts, even though you need to understand the whole of it. We'll also be preparing what we call popular versions, specifically for various segments in the sector. For instance, I would pick out a construction worker, a fundi, yule wa kawaida, a mason, yule anatumia...
The people we call fundi wa mjengo.
Yeah, wa mjengo. Very important people, by the way, because...
They're also recognized in this document.
They are recognized in the document. The same part, paragraph 6, part 2, recognizes them there, because they are regulated under the NCA Act. Just like engineers under Engineers Act, and just architects and quantity surveyors under the Architects and Quantity Surveyors Act. So all professionals regulated under relevant act that existing are there, recognized. So all I wanted to say that we'll be developing popular versions that is specifically unique and meant for use by those respective professionals under the categories that we recognize. So for now, of course, the whole code can be found in the website, but going forward, we'll also be developing popular versions that can now be easily consumable and easily used by the various stakeholders.
You know, paragraph 2 of this document, I mean, it talks about professionals who are allowed to supervise that construction site. And these are a physical planner, an architect, engineer, land surveyor, building surveyor, a quantity surveyor, accredited site supervisor, and accredited skilled worker who are duly registered under the relevant laws of Kenya. Are these the only people who are critical in a construction site?
Well, for a building project, yes, these are the people, because the building starts with planning and ends with construction. From there it goes to maintenance. But we also recognize that maintenance also requires them. So that's why we have the building surveyors who are very responsible for, very charged with the responsibility of maintenance of buildings. And we have the workers who are charged with the responsibility of actual construction and so on and so forth. So yes, this is what's the space. I know you can be asking about what about the space of environmentalists. Yes, they play a key role. It's, you know, we have the software part, yeah, because any construction affects environment. So there is need to understand that an environment is an expert who is now given license to practice as such, but their work is feeding the work of the professionals identified here. Yes.
What is the role of IT specialists? Because this document also captures the fact that we are living in the era of broadband technology, internet. What is the role of people in the IT industry, like software engineers? What is their role?
A very good question. So there is a difference between implementation and consumption. So I want to categorize, just to respond to your question, that if you look at the building code, in terms of data, there is provision for reticulation of data facility services into the building. So it's not the discretion of the specifier or the designer, but the code specifies so. So once, and this is supposed to be done by, for instance, the electrical engineer, somebody who is in the electrical engineering space to provide what we call the services or the infrastructure necessary to onboard the data facilities. For instance, I'll talk about conduits, I'll talk about manholes. Once this is provided, there are people who are we change the responsibility of structured cable. Remember, electrical engineer is a very wide discipline. It caters for the hardware part, heavy power, the light power, as well as the conduits and even electricity into the buildings, even telecommunication into the building. So now, the one that is done, you know, there is this person will come to the terminal, what I normally call the end, the terminal point, where you know you plug in, and now you can do your software bit from there. So the hardware part, professionals are all catered for here. The software part are on the consumer side, and they're expected to find a building ready for use so that they can just plug and play.
Before I let you go, engineer, this document is also expected to help the government in the achievements or aspirations of the affordable housing project. How does it fit in the government agenda of affordable housing?
Very good question. So if you look at the old code, it was very prescriptive, it was very restrictive, even in terms of materials. So I'll give you an example. For instance, if you are to go to an existing building construction site using the old code, you expect to see a wall, a normal masonry wall, built using a stone from the quarry. That stone should be 200 millimeter thick. And for instance, Nairobi Bluestone, the new code gives the performance requirements. It says the wall must be able to perform this way. Whether you make it of stone, whether you make it of timber, whether you make it of steel, whatever you make it of, but the performance requirement must be maintained. So that means there's a lot of space for innovators to enter into this space where they can come up with new innovative materials, new innovative technologies that can accelerate the development of the affordable housing, so that using the new approach, we can now move faster in terms of speed of construction with a better quality and enhanced at a reduced cost. That for me is a game changer. And this can accelerate the number of units we are rolling out for the affordable housing. They can come out faster so that people are able to occupy them early.
What is your final remarks to the people watching this program?
Well, I would need to say this. This document has taken our country 20 years to develop and have it ready. I want to thank everyone who has played that role. I want to appeal to all of us that as we get into the new chapter of the National Building Code 2024, as we roll out the construction industry using this document, watch this space for a better, safer, and quality and well-regulated construction industry using this code.
Very good.
Yeah.
Engineer, I don't want to add anything more. Thank you very much indeed for finding time to be with us here and, of course, helping us understand the content of the Building Code, the National Building Code 2024. We'll keep on engaging to find out more.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Very good.
Thank you.
Engineer Maurice Akech is the Executive Director at the National Construction Authority, joining us this afternoon on Inside Government to help us explain more about this document, the National Building Code 2024. We'll keep on engaging to understand more of this document. My name is O'Brien Kimani. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And remember, at 4 o'clock, we are watching just to go to the State House, where President William Ruto is expected to address the nation at about 4, and we shall be live from State House. O'Brien Kimani is my name. Have yourself a good afternoon.
On me brethren, big things are going. Remember, each and every Monday we have to shell down the place with nothing but the best of smooth way the vibes in your favorite station. You know these things.
Alafu kila Tuesday, kata simu tupo side, giving you Kenyan music from the 254.
And of course, you can spice up your Wednesday by enjoying blazing hot hip hop and R&B jams.
don't got no label. She say she want bottles.
Vibes and vibes as we go all across Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, all the way to Tanzania to give you nothing but the best on Afro Thursday. Make sure you make a date with us each and every single Friday with me, DJ_Liza Diva,
DJ Colder,
And me, Wanjiko. This is Club One Extra.
Unanifanya nisikie kunyongwa. Hatija ai, mani especially ukisonga.
Regardless of what language you speak, what country you're from, or how old you are, you probably know what this symbol is. The Olympics is the largest, most global, highest standard for athleticism. But since when? The Olympics started all the way back in 776 BC in Greece, but this was not the Olympics that we know today. People will perform in the nude, they will fight to the death, and it was all done in the name of pagan gods. It was a tradition that will supersede the political situation, so they will set